12, 10, 3, 2. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm Rodd Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. Doesn't that scene just look beautiful? Welcome, everyone. How are you guys? Come on in. And thank you for being here. This is, of course, Insights and Straight Talk with your host, Rodd Duff, and producer Barbie, where we don't do interviews here, okay? We do conversations, real ones, the kind that let people kind of breathe and think and finally say things that usually get rushed past or frankly left unsaid. Today's conversation sits squarely in our health and wellness lane. But I want to be clear right out of the gate here. This is not a tips and tricks kind of episode. It's not a trend-driven wellness content. This is about menopause, perimenopause, and what women are actually experiencing versus what they're often told to tolerate, normalize, or just push through quietly. Our audience includes women currently navigating these transitions themselves, but also partners, adult children, employers, and caregivers who are often unprepared for how deeply this stage of life affects energy, identity, relationships, work, and long-term health. And that's exactly why today's guest matters. Dr. Blake Myers is a naturopathic doctor, homeopath, a herbalist, an author, and a graduate level instructor and in integrative and functional nutrition. This is fascinating. He's been in clinical practice for well over a decade, working with patients to uncover root causes, not just manage symptoms. What stood out to us isn't just his credentials. It's his willingness to talk about what's missing from the mainstream conversation. Why so many women feel dismissed or misdiagnosed? Why labs can look normal while life feels anything but? And why menopause is often treated as a narrow hormonal event instead of a whole life transition. Here on this show, we're interested in translation, turning lived experience into insights that actually connects to real lives. That means we talk physiology and emotion, medicine and meaning, systems and lived experience. Before we dive in, I do want to thank the partners who help keep this conversation and these conversations accessible and independent, including our community sponsors, local partners, and the readers and supporters who follow this work across platforms. And if you're new here, welcome. This show exists for the great middle class, for people who want clarity, agency, and honest dialogue in a world that often overcomplicates what matters most. Dr. Myers, I'm really glad you're here. Let's start at this one spot, okay? Mm-hmm. I want, if you would, to give us what, in your own words, what caused you to work under, especially with women that are in this transitional period of life? Why has that become such a big part of your practice?
Yeah, well, I I started practicing in 2014, and when I first started, I didn't like hang up the shingle, so to speak, of my business and like say I was doing women's health. I kind of was just, I did primary care. and just was open to anybody and everybody. And I saw people of all ages, and men and women, but really over the next like year or two of having my practice going, women were primarily who showed up for my help. And that's just been the case ever since then, that the majority of my patients have been women in the ages of maybe 35 to 70, let's say. So many of my patients then are in the stage of perimenopause and menopause. And so I needed to figure out, how do I support them? What's really going on here? How do I help them navigate this time of life that can be, for some, it's a spectrum. For some women, it's really like not that big of a deal. It's like, oh, I have some hot flashes, my periods are stopping or changing, and they kind of move through it. And it's kind of amazing that it was just like this little blip on the radar. And then for other women, it's really brutal. There can be a loss of sense of self and identity, and so many physical and mental, emotional changes. So I had to learn a lot about that. And over time, as I've come to understand how I view what menopause is really about, not just from a physiologic or a biological perspective, but as, I guess you might say, kind of a psychosocial, spiritual perspective. It's like, this is really important. This is helping women move into a phase of their life that can be some of the best and most important years of their lives, decades of their lives. And we need feminine wisdom in our world right now as much as ever. And I feel like if I can do a part to help women enter that phase where they really start to embody kind of what you might call the archetype of the wise woman or the matriarch, and be able to be leaders in their families and communities in a healthy way. I'm like, that's an amazing thing to be able to do, So that's kind of how I got my experience and moved into a passion in this space.
So it was a natural evolution, so to speak, or rollout, or however you want to put that, in that you started your practice, and just there became this need that kept pressing on you until there was a point in time where it's like, wait a minute, there's something really big here that I need to address. And that's how that journey began.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of summarizing it. It was just kind of by supporting those who were seeking my help, and then also realizing, wow, there's like beyond just helping, the individuals who are coming to see me. There's a lot of support that is needed, because there's a lot of sometimes misinformation, and a lot of times also just not energy given to, whether it's in research. There's a huge lack of research in women's health.
Let me stop you there for a second. And absolutely, let's keep going there. But when you say misinformation, that was one of the things that is obvious. I mean, we know about it, but I don't know what that is. Can you just kind of lay out some of the stuff that's going out there that, because I'm a male, so, I'm at a distinct disadvantage. Producer Barbie and I have spent 20 some years together, and there's a lot of things that happen in this stage of life. But you mentioned a couple things. What are some of the questions that I have? What are some of the misinformation that's out there? But you also mentioned about, I'm saying this word wrong, matriarchy.
Matriarch?
Yeah. So that's an important, that's probably, I saw on social media, Bill Maher, actually, they were having this discussion, and they were talking about feminism and all that, which we're not going to get into that here, but they talked about how they always focus on this aspect of a woman. Women have like four humans have different stages in their life, and they rested on the matriarch at that point. That's at the point where women most likely give their most to society, reaching out, knowing things that others don't, right? Yeah. That's
Absolutely.
Kind of part of this.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a lot of things and asked a couple of things. So I think, the misinformation.
ADHD, dude, a little ADHD going on here. I'm just trying
no worries. Yeah. So I think the misinformation piece I was speaking about.
We have 100 people on, by the way, already.
Hey, everybody.
Go ahead.
And misinformation, I mean, there may be some, and maybe that's not the right word, but I would say part information. So what I mean by that,
just as bad,
is that most women can tell you what happens in menopause. They'll say, oh, my estrogen's going down, my estrogen's declining. And absolutely, that's true. But that knowing has come out of the narrative that Hormones is what's stealing the show in menopause and perimenopause. That hormones are going all over, and hormones is what we need to focus on. Hormone replacement therapy is what is kind of the solution to help with everything. And absolutely, hormones is a big piece of the picture. But even just in that, estrogen, most people know about, but a lot of other hormones are declining. We need to talk about progesterone. We need to talk about other metabolites related to progesterone, testosterone, right? And when
that
women,
surprised me. I heard that there's a buildup of testosterone at that point now, right?
There can be, because testosterone getting converted to estrogen is not happening the same anymore, but it can go down too. It just depends. But so for women, their ovaries are making the majority of their hormones. But when the egg supply runs out, the ovaries stop producing those hormones. Those hormones are still needed, not in the same levels as during reproductive years, but other organs and tissues have to take over. So like the adrenal glands make hormones, for example. So, but what I want to say on that is, so just from the picture of hormones, there's a lot more to consider, but hormones is not what it's all about either. If you look at the research, the gut takes a major shift during perimenopause and menopause. So the microbiome completely does a 180, basically. So certain bacteria are decreasing, others are increasing, and digestive function completely can change. Your gut controls your immune system to a large degree. So there are so many aspects there. The adrenal system, so it's called the HPA axis. It's the brain and adrenal communication system that can become dysregulated, and that's where cortisol comes from, and is your stress response. The brain, I could just go on about all the body systems, but there's
let's stay with cortisol.
Yeah.
So what basically happens in the body, right? You have three brains, and depending on what's happening, and this is kind of unrelated, but the brain is what it's doing is just pumping up the chemicals to wherever the gut or the heart is telling you, that brain talks to that brain, and then the chemicals go out. Is that kind of, am I in that correctly, or am I oversimplifying that? And then what's cortisol and what's peri?
What's perimenopause versus menopause? Okay.
Correct.
Well, so your brain, if you've heard of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland,
yes.
So these are little tiny structures in your brain, and
Correct.
That's the brain sending out signals to everywhere else in your body of what's needed. So maybe it's the thyroid, let's say. Your brain sends out the message, says, we need thyroid hormone. Then your thyroid puts out thyroid hormone, but you don't want it to just keep going because you don't want too much thyroid hormone. So it feeds back. And so the thyroid basically feeds back to the brain and says, I have enough, slow down. And so the brain is kind of it's like pumping the gas or slowing it down, basically. And so
kind of like the drip when you're in the hospital and you're getting, it either adds more medicine or less medicine, but more sophisticated than that is what you're saying.
I mean, if you want to think of a simple example, it's kind of like a thermometer, right? It's like it needs to keep the temperature at a certain level. And so like when it's warm enough, it clicks off, right? And then it clicks on back on again to make, so it's really a similar kind of system.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And you were asking about cortisol. So cortisol is a hormone that it's one of the primary drivers of the way that you adapt to stress. And that could be mental, emotional stress, but also physical stress. So if it's an infection that you're going through and there's inflammation, and it manages that. And it also has a large part to do with managing blood sugar levels. Well, you can think of cortisol kind of simply like, if you have too much cortisol, you feel it's kind of like fight or flight. Like you feel super anxious. So you're going to feel like wired. So if you have a lot of cortisol, you're not sleeping, for example. So your cortisol goes low at night, and then it spikes in the morning. It's called the cortisol awakening response. It wakes you up. That's how kind of potent it is. So it wakes you up, and slowly throughout the day, it just tapers down until it's like nighttime. You're supposed to sleep.
Wow.
Your brain is running that, right? But that system, it's called the HPA axis. That's the brain adrenal system. If that gets dysregulated, now you have a dysregulation in your immune system because it controls inflammation in the immune system. You have a dysregulation in blood sugar a lot of times. It starts to mess with your metabolism and the way your body gains weight or loses it and distributes fat. You're having sleep issues like insomnia, or like you can have trouble where you're sleepy during the day and awake at night and all kinds of things. So I brought that up to say that during the menopausal transition, there are a lot of brain changes going on. Most of the symptoms that women are experiencing are neurologic. They're due to changes in the brain and the structure. And so this HPA axis can get dysregulated pretty easily during that time. And so what's one of the main things that women experience during perimenopause and menopause is anxiety and sleep issues, and hot flashes and temperature dysregulation, which is all brain related stuff. Yeah.
Is all of that cortisol?
No, not. I mean, cortisol will impact and create a lot of the symptoms that women commonly experience. And, part of it's teasing out from like a clinical perspective. It's understanding like.
What's teasing out mean?
Teasing out the cause. So it's like, oh, you're having sleep issues.
Oh, okay.
Are there other things that are cluing in? Like, is this maybe kind of a cortisol issue? Is this more of an estrogen dropping issue and just the effects that has on the brain? Are there other things going on? So it can kind of get complex,
and
but
it changes
out the cause, and not always assuming, oh, this is just due to estrogen.
And it varies by the person or the circumstance.
Well, everybody's got susceptibilities in different ways that are.
Or is there a lot of commonality in this? There's a great number. There's some differences, but most really are affected in the ways that you're talking about now, to varying degrees.
I will say, you can kind of think of it as buckets. Like, so the HPA axis is kind of a bucket that could be impacted. The gut is a bucket that can be impacted. The immune system is a bucket that can be impacted. Every woman going through this transition, those areas will be impacted, but it comes down then to individual susceptibility. Where are you impacted more? Some women will have no digestive issues or gut issues. It doesn't mean that their microbiome is not changing and things, but if the digestive system happens to be an area of susceptibility for someone, then they might start to have IBS-like symptoms. They could start having constipation or diarrhea, start to get leaky gut, which then causes a lot of other issues. And a lot of the symptoms of
let me clarify something. Is leaky gut, is that where there's perforations in the gut lining? Or is that something different?
Well, kind of. It's the gut is the primary barrier between the inside and the outside world. So when you eat something, most of us are like, oh, it's in my body right now because I swallowed it. But technically it's not in your body because you didn't absorb it. So you've got this barrier that's one cell, just one little thin layer, but it's very, very selective. So only certain things are supposed to go across your gut. And right on the other side, from the inside of your gut to the other side, is your immune system. It's covered in immune cells because your that's, if you think about it, like how much testing of the outside world is happening by your immune system. In your gut. Probably a lot, right? It's reading, it's like sticking fingers into your gut and reading like what's there and what bacteria are there and everything. So what I want to say on that is different things can impact that barrier. And if that barrier is not as selective as it's supposed to be, or actually gets leaky because you've got these cells, but if they get inflammation or something breaks down, they get spaced in there and stuff starts getting through that's not supposed to. And what happens? It lights up your immune system like a Christmas tree. It's just like inflammation, and that's actually one of the precursors to autoimmunity is you need to have a leaky gut going on because it impacts your immune system.
You always, I love this show. I told you I'm going to be hitting 500 shows here pretty soon. So I get to talk to a lot of experts in a lot of different areas, including this that sits in our health and wellness lane. And we've got a lot of stuff to get into because you're affecting these women's lives in a positive way through traditional medicine, but also through medicine that's actually gaining a lot more credibility and a lot more knowledge as it gets knowledge, because it's well, homogeneic and, homeopathic and the whole body that you're looking at here. But what you just described is fascinating, because we know that the human body is sophisticated. The brain we're an amazing being, obviously. There's a lot of reasons for that, or a lot of questions and why we're that. But at the end of the day, what you just described was fascinating, that how the body is positioned, even in the gut area. Like you said, you're not actually entering the body yet, as I ate that piece of chicken or whatever. It's in a protective layer that this immune system is reaching out and discovering what it is that is coming in from the outside to protect it. That's fascinating. Why don't we, that's not very well known, that deep of maybe I'm just getting over fascinated about something, but it's fascinating.
Fascinating. It's amazing. Yeah. It's I would say among, naturopathic doctors, functional medicine trained practitioners, that's very well known. I mean, it's very, we know that we have to think about the gut, if not treat the gut, in most chronic illness situations. And no matter what's going on, because you can have symptoms anywhere in the body from that. So in that circle, yeah, it's well known about, but I think part of the issue is that, in like a conventional medical circle, that may not be known exactly what's going on and how that impacts the health of the person in front of the practitioner. But even if it is, the trouble is most conventionally trained practitioners wouldn't know what to do about it. Even if they were like, oh, I think this person has intestinal permeability, which is the sort of scientific name for leaky gut. It's like, okay, that's going on, but like, what do I do? Because they're not trained in that way. And the toolbox that they have is a toolbox it's a very different toolbox.
Different set of tools. Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned at the beginning of my bio that I teach in a graduate program in integrative and functional nutrition. So those are different things. So functional medicine and nutrition is, you're trying to improve the function of a body system usually. So the cardiovascular system, the digestive system, you're doing things to help improve the function of those systems, which ultimately then supports the natural healing mechanisms of the body. So you're trying to support healing in that way. But integrative is actually integrating different parts, different pieces of the world. So like for me, I have a license to practice medicine in Washington State. I can prescribe medications, and I do prescribe medications if they're the right tool for the job. But it's a different philosophy to say, what drug do I give to impact this symptom or disease, versus saying, what am I trying to do to help the person heal? What's the job that I have to do, and what's the best tool for the job? And that will, and if you have a broad toolbox, prescription medicines, herbal medicines, nutrients in supplement form, all kinds of things, you can choose a better tool usually. So that's kind of the difference between the integrative piece and the functional piece.
That's something that, it just shows how much we don't know, because I'm learning how much more important the gut actually is, to the body. And what you just said there is a mind blower. I mean, you got to know that that's a mind blower. It's not a mind blower to you, obviously, because you've been studying that. But here I am from the outside going that the gut is this fascinating thing, literally one cell layer thick that allows only certain things to go out. And it's communicating with your immune system, which makes sense. I assume your intestines are part of that as well, right? Because as it goes through, you're flushing stuff out, but aren't you still anyway, that's an additional thing. You're making me so freaking curious. Let me change the curve here a little bit with Clive. So I think obviously some of the stuff that is going to be coming in is going to be asking, how do we know what's right or what's big or what's little or what's, but Clive, obviously he's, I would assume, a partner. How can women tell normal changes versus red flags? And we'll talk more about this a little bit, but. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a big question. I guess it sort of means on what you mean by red flags, but I would presume that Clive means, like something that's going to be potentially life-threatening. Like I'm thinking of the heart, for example. Heart palpitations is really common during the menopausal transition. So it's like, when is this just normal heart palpitations? When is this something I should be concerned about if I need to go to the hospital? And so, I mean, I guess for one, I would say there could be red flags in a lot of different parts of the body. So it's always good if you're experiencing alterations in your body. Even, I usually tell women, like, don't presume, don't just assume that, oh, this is menopause and this is the normal part of it and aging. Go work with somebody and get some appropriate labs done, get a workup. So I
was just going to ask that. When do people kind of transition into that thought process? When do they, I mean, I don't know much about menopause. Is there's something that's starting to happen in your body now? You're saying there that women just automatically say, oh, this is menopause, I'm starting that process.
No.
But instead, they should do the opposite. They should go talk to you or somebody.
Well, let me back up a little bit. Let me back up a little bit. I think that we probably skipped over some important pieces to understanding for this. So most of the time, I would say it's fair to say that women don't know that they're in perimenopause when they actually start.
Which is beginning menopause then? It's
a slow process as women's ovaries start to, they're just declining essentially in their reproductive function, which also
and that's what starts everything. The ovaries start everything then, kind of.
Yeah, and the brain ovary connection. So, I said the HPA axis is the brain adrenal, the HPO axis is the brain ovary connection. Okay,
gotcha.
It's kind of the changes that are happening there. But during the perimenopause, meaning sort of next to the menopause, not all the way in menopause. So let's just do a couple of definitions. Menopause means the menstrual cycle has stopped, and it's specifically stopped for 12 months. Once a woman doesn't have a period for 12 months, then she's diagnosed with menopause, and she's now postmenopausal. And there are kind of some of the own set of symptoms that can go in that. Perimenopause is before that, and it can be years. It could be a couple of years. It could be 7 years.
So what's happening then?
Hormones can be up and down a lot. There's a slow over time, a slow decline, but as the up and down happens, there's a lot of changes in the brain and the nervous system. So one of the first things that could happen could be a woman starts getting anxiety. So her periods are still normal. She's having a regular cycle, but now all of a sudden, like, she's like, I never had anxiety. And it's like, I'm like anxious when I go to the grocery store, those sorts of things. There could be other, mood related things, like maybe now, could be anger. It could just be like, could be weepiness, could be alterations. So all those things can happen. There could be some other subtle types of, physical changes, like maybe the hair starts to like shed more, or it gets thinner. But everything else is kind of normal, right? It's more like in hindsight, a woman will tell you, oh, actually, now that I look back on it, like that was probably the first thing that happened. But at the time, that's what I'm saying. Most women don't realize it's sort of starting.
And that can be like 7 years, you're saying?
Yeah.
Or more, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of.
Go ahead. I just wanted to make sure
it depends on how you define it. It could be a decade, but it just sort of depends. But, let's say 3 to 5 years, let's say that there's up and down in the hormones and a lot of physical and psychological symptoms that can come along with that. I just also say, in case women are wondering this, a lot of times women will feel surprised that their periods stopped and then they started again. Like they've been gone, they haven't had a period in 4 or 5 months, and then their period comes back again. They're like, what? I thought I was in menopause. And that's pretty normal, because that just means there's still a little bit of reproductive function going on in the ovaries. And women can go 11 months and then have a period again. They're like, dang, I thought I was in menopause. Wow. So it can go like that, but also there can be a major change in the flow. So if you're not in perimenopause, know that this can happen. Or if you're experiencing this, know it's normal that the flow can get really heavy, or it can get really light. It could be the opposite of what you've experienced most of your life. So that's also normal. And you can also have.
So would it shift then? Are you saying that it would shift, and if you're normally kind of heavy and now you're really light, or vice versa? Or does it go back and forth, or it can do anything?
It can kind of be all over, yeah. But I mean, if a woman's had, if a woman's had a light period her whole life, it could start to be really heavy, and it could be the opposite. Tends to seem to be more heavy usually. And the one other thing I want to say that women don't often know is if it's normal or not, is that normally periods will be like 28 days or maybe 30, 31 days, kind of, and maybe, and even if you've been regular with your periods, your whole life, during perimenopause, because of the way the hormones are changing, they can get stacked, and so it can be really short. So you could have a period, and then it could be 2 weeks later, you could like have another period happen. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. They're called loop cycles. And it's just something that happens. So just in case anybody's experiencing that and they're like, what's wrong? That can be normal. So
is there anything that could be an obvious red flag? I mean, I don't know if I'm asking too broad of a question here, but just to kind of close out what Cliff was asking about, is there something while you're in this period? I mean, there's always red flags, and I don't know if this is a fair question or not. Yeah. But at this point, is there something that could be going on that is like, whoa, wait a minute, this definitely, I mean, all these things you're talking about is the body changing, so they're all different, and it's going to be that way. It's going to happen to different degrees. But is there something that you go, whoa, wait a minute, this likely could be a red flag, or is there any such thing?
I mean, I get, yeah, it is a broad question, so it's a little hard to know how to answer. But I mean, what I'm thinking of is, if you think of, any kind of serious health condition, if those symptoms are going on, you should have it worked up, right? Which I know is broad, but I'm thinking cardiovascular system. Like, if there's any question that what you're experiencing with your heart is this a serious rhythm thing I'm feeling when I feel heart palpitations? Is there any pain at all? Because heart issues can travel. It can travel into your gut, or feel it in your abdomen. It can be in the arm. It can be in the back. So if there's just any questions, I would never hesitate to work someone up or tell them to, go get some labs done. Go to get a cardiologist referral and get an EKG done. Have a stress test done, because for one, there's no reason those things are available. There's no reason to mess around with it if you're not sure or if you're concerned about it. And I will also say, anytime anybody who's ever had anything going on with their heart, palpitations or anything, it will create a lot of anxiety. There's just something about the heart that's it'll freak you out. And so to get a workup and hear from a cardiologist that everything looks fine, and these are these types of palpitations, and it's okay, it's going to calm you down. Yeah, it's so worth it. But so I don't know if that's a good enough answer for the red flags.
No, that's a perfect answer, because it's exactly the point. You being informed, having information is always a good thing. Even if the information isn't good, that's better than not knowing, right? I mean, so. And what's the old saying? 80% of the things we worry about never actually happen. And we worry because we don't know, right? So if you know now, you just feel all around better. Why does menopause affect? And I think we're already kind of talking about this with what the brain's kind of doing with the signals it's receiving, but those emotions go way deeper, right? What's the chemicals that are causing this?
Well, so I think it's without going that granular, it's from a broader perspective, the brain is undergoing a complete reorganization during this time of a woman's
Interesting.
life. Yeah, there's
what do you mean by that?
Neurons are being certain
actual
aspects
neurons
of the brain, and neurons are shutting down. And basically creating a blank slate. You can sort of I'm just trying to create some sort of imagery here. It's not exactly.
We talk about that a lot. We talk about that a lot on this show. So I'm with you right here, man. I'm in your world now.
Yeah. So you can think of it a little bit like, okay, the woman's moving into a very different phase of life, what was needed from like a brain perspective, behavioral perspective, physiological, everything, what was needed in life before? What was needed during the reproductive years of life that is not needed in the future? So those things kind of shut down, if you will, a blank slate to create new neural pathways for what's going to benefit a woman for the next decades of her life. And I will say benefit all of us, which is a little bit what I can get into more about talking about the matriarch and stuff.
Yes,
we
absolutely.
need women. We need that wisdom so much. But
okay, so right where you are now, just to fill this out a little bit more. So I'm not an expert at anything, but I'm very familiar with the neurons and what's happening in the world of the neuron, because we talk a lot about when you learn new things and how beneficial that is to brain health, just period. Well, are you saying then as these other as these existing pathways that serve their purpose, and as the transition is occurring, now there's those neural pathways are shutting down and they're leaving an open slate? Is that an automatic that new things are filling in, or do people assist that? Like, I mean, how does that, I know when I get new neurons, it's because I'm learning something new, but I'm active in that. And what you're talking about, is that a passive thing that actually biology does for the human body, specifically women? And then we can go into matriarch.
Yeah, well, yes, I can, assure women that your body is wise, and your biology will take the road that it is supposed to take in this. But what I want to stick here also with this question and connect it and say that clearly what I'm describing is a transition, right? I'm describing what you really could sort of understand as a metamorphosis almost, right? Because the brain is doing this reorganization. And so you can imagine, as there's this losing neurons, maybe some new ones coming in, all this, it's like, of course, women going through that walk into the room and they're like, what the hell did I just come in here for? What, like, of course there's like brain fog and forgetting things. And, that makes sense at this point, right? But
100%. Yes. The brain's working its ass off.
But think about this also. I want to get to this identity piece that's being asked here. If you think about what you describe as yourself, how do you identify yourself? It's by the way that you think and the way your mind works. It's about the way you look in your physical body and how you feel in your body. It's the way you are in relationships with your spouse, with your friends. It's how you are in your community. All of these things, right, are like the package that you say, this is me, that's who I am. Well, all of those things start to change for many women. I'm not going to generalize and say everybody experiences this the same way, but many women experience that the way that they start to feel and exist in various circles in the world changes. The way that they relate and feel in their body starts to change. Things they used to tolerate, they no longer are willing to tolerate. All of these kinds of changes that happen. And so it's like, it absolutely is foundationally impacting your identity because you are changing. And I love the analogy that the epitome of metamorphosis in the biologic world is the caterpillar to a butterfly. It's so different on the other side. It's the same organism, but we don't even call it the same. It's like, that's a caterpillar, that's a butterfly, but it's the same thing. So I think of that with the menopausal transition as like, women are like in the chrysalis during this time. And so if you ask yourself, like, what does the caterpillar need to be healthy and enter the stage of being the butterfly? That's the question I'm asking. Like, during this transition and all this change happening, what do women need to enter the other side of it vital and strong, and potentially just feeling the best they've ever felt in their life? I mean, many women will say like, menopause, perimenopause was hell and menopause sucked at first. And now that I've been into it for a few years and everything is calming down, the symptoms are calming down, it's like, I feel great. My sex drive is coming back. My hair looks, full again. I was
going to ask about that. That's something that's surprising, that consumable medicine, in other words, the most known by the great American middle class, us, it doesn't have that definition more in mind. I mean, not more, it's basically not there. I mean, there's a very, like you said, like we talked earlier, this is a very rare conversation. It's a conversation not near enough. And you're kind of leaning right now into why, because we haven't got into the biggest part when they come out of this cocoon, out of the chrysalis, what a woman is now, and probably the most important stage of a woman's important stage, at least socially. And I'm just starting to hear more and more about this, but this is something that really connects all those dots, and we don't talk about that hardly at all.
Well, I mean, historically,
it's surprising to me.
I mean, historically, sorry, did you need to say something?
No, you just said historically, so maybe there's something that's already been there.
I just want to acknowledge that historically, because of the patriarchal world that we live in, the end of reproductive years was the sort of end of a woman's life, and did not acknowledge anything that we're talking about right now. So this is where I like to take the conversation there, and there are more people talking about this, luckily, but that's just a narrative that just has to die, because it's not true at all, right? And so the other thing I was thinking when you're talking is there are very few animals in the world that go through menopause. And I'm not going to try to name them. There's like a handful is all. But the ones that do are matriarchal societies, and the women take over, and the women are the wise elders that are the ones that pass on the information of survivability to the rest of the offspring, and they run the show. And so I think that there's something pretty amazing about that.
Well, if you extend that out even a little bit more, it's almost like a woman, this is like 40, 50, 60 age frame, right? Something like in that area. I'm oversimplifying, but somewhere in there, 50s,
menopause
late
is
50s.
On average at age 51 when the periods actually stop, but maybe 45, 47 is when the perimenopause starts, but it could be earlier.
So 51 and on, I should have known that. Actually, I think I did know that. That's actually, but anyway, it's almost like those first two stages. Well, let's call it three stages. There's childhood, growing up to teens, and then you become that. And again, I'm broad brushing here. I know we live in a wide ranging society sometimes, but broad brushing, a woman then has her mating years and reproduction years, and then raising, at that point. And then you go into this stage of life. It's almost like these other stages of life, we're preparing for that period. I'm saying it again. Would you do it for me? Matriarch.
Oh, matriarch. Yeah.
Matriarch. Yeah. I don't know why I'm stuck on that word right now.
The matriarch. But, so a lot of women hear matriarch and they're like, I think for a lot of people, it makes think of like motherhood and family, and it can be that, but it's much bigger than that. A matriarch is just basically a leader in an organization or a tribe or a society. It's like a leadership role of a group.
Well, they talk about the matriarch of a family too.
Yeah. So it can be the family, but I like to not every woman has a family and wants to have children. And so I just try to point out that what I'm speaking about is bigger than that. But I think if we're paying attention to biology and sociology, then it's pretty obvious, I think, that humans were meant to function with women in a primary leadership role. And that's what I believe we need. And so that's why I feel passionate about helping women to do that, to be lead and be whatever they want to be in their lives,
Yeah. And this is actually now, like you said, historically, it's actually been the opposite of what reality is, what the actual biological truth is. It's cracks. We obviously know the term. So there's cracks, that have leaked through, especially with really strong women. But right now, the lens needs to be shifted, because you're here talking about this because the lens currently is, like you said, historically after their birth, after they give birth, after that stage in their life, historically women's role has been reduced, or looked at as being reduced, when actually all of that has been, I mean, think about it, a human body can give birth to another living human.
Doesn't matter how much science I've always felt it doesn't matter how much science we can know about how conception happens and fetus grows and everything. Doesn't matter what science we know, it will never take away that's magical. Like that
is magical.
It's just, it's like, that's the definition of magic. It's like, it doesn't matter how much facts we know. It's like, that's incredible, and nothing will make that not incredible.
No. And so we stop there in our shallowness, I guess, our narrowish thinking, when actually that should be a message. I mean, sure, there's a whole biology going on, and I've contributed, but that is a message saying that's magical. And what then is that what is that preparing this person for? And that's the point at which we haven't crossed over enough to grow as a society, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're describing is the testament that women actually hold the power, and they hold a greater power than men could ever understand. They have to hold the power to create. Just a cultural, societal, acknowledgement of that.
I don't think it's a competition, but what I do think is that it's a lack of the society's knowledge that these roles are basically batons being handed off back and forth when you're raising a family. But then you have that, like you just said, men can never experience that. There's that gap that as now the family still needs raising. I mean, it still needs growing, and it still needs that matriarchal. Hey, I did it pretty good there. They need that matriarchal. And you know what? The man isn't designed for that. And I don't want to make that sound off or anything, but think about it. That's a message. That baby being grown in your body producing that is a message that that's a miracle. That's magical. But then there's all of that goes on, and you continue to mature and raise that. Now you have that experience to be able to be that leader that needs to really continue to fill that role. And that's what makes, we always talk about inside out, the human better, inside out, which makes the family better from the inside out, society, and on and on and on, right? That's where it all begins. Do you mind if I shift this just a second?
Go for it.
We got a lot of questions here,
and
they're kind of going off on some other thing, but I do also got to do this. I made this dude. He was on one of my very first shows. He popped in it was a AI show, I think it was. But I said, I'm going to always shout you out. He shows up every once in a while. But Bradley Pomp, shout out to you, brother. Why are labs often normal when symptoms aren't? It just made a lot of sense to me. You heard me say that in the opening monologue, and I think he picked it up on it. But at the end of the day, your labs, you talked about it. If you're feeling weird about something isn't right, go in and get it checked out. I forgot one of the words you used, but get the labs pulled. And that's a lot of information. That's what the body's doing right now. How does that work?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know whether to answer this specifically about the menopausal transition or just kind of in general, maybe.
No, I think he's, well, I mean, it could be either way. But I think he's talking about menopause here, maybe.
Yeah. I think, well, I guess I'll try to answer it generally and tie it. Maybe that's the best way, then tie it to the menopausal
That's the way
condition.
to do it. That's perfect.
Just say
that's perfect.
There are a lot of different types of labs, and so it depends on what you're looking at. Much of what the conventional medical world will look at are, disease markers for diagnosis. They're looking at diagnostic kinds of markers. A common thing will be like your complete blood count. It's got your red blood cells and white blood cells, and you've got your metabolic panels that have like your kidney function and all these different things. But if you think about what some of the common things that are looked at from a conventional lab perspective, there can be a lot of, I guess I'll just say there can be a lot of dysfunction in different parts of the body that, unless it's really bad, unless it's like really dysfunctional in one of those things the labs is looking at, then it'll just come back normal. But there are so many things that are going on inside your cells and in different ways, that the way that your body is functioning, that those typical labs aren't looking at. So an example, I'm teaching a functional lab course actually this semester, and we're looking at advanced stool analysis. We're looking at the function of mitochondria, which are the energy producers inside of every cell in your body, except for red blood cells. But mitochondria, no conventional doctor is going to look at how are your mitochondria functioning. But guess what? If your mitochondria are dysfunctioning, which you can look at with tests, but most aren't going to know to order that or what to even do with it. But if that's dysfunctioning, now your energy, you're wiped out and fatigued. You might have chronic pain, brain fog, sleep issues, so many other things that can be going on. So just an example of like, there's functional tests, and then there's tests that, like you might have fatigue and you go to your doctor and they're looking at your thyroid and they're looking like, how are your red blood cells and white blood cells? And like, do they have anemia and all these things? It's like, no, you don't have any of that stuff. Come to find out you have fatigue because your cortisol's off. Your HPA axis is messed up,
But your panels weren't testing for that, is what you're saying.
Right. They weren't testing for that. Yeah. They were looking at, or like, another example might be like B12. Well, no, let's just say iron.
Yeah.
Let's say iron.
Okay.
Iron deficiency anemia is the most common type of anemia. But when your iron stores start to get low, you'll feel really fatigued. It'll kind of look like anemia, except when you do the blood test, you don't have anemia, which means you have enough red blood cells because your body needs enough red blood cells. The last thing that's going to happen, your body's going to hold on until you're so iron deficient that now it just can't make any more red blood cells. So it's like thinking about, we should look at the iron stores to see if that's low and why this person has fatigue. We don't want to wait until they're anemic because they're in iron so low. So it's like what's being looked at and what's the thought process behind who's looking at it,
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And that, you could, so you're saying there, you could have a different result months later or weeks later because it's finally depleted to a point where it shows up because the body is an example.
That's an example of that. But I mean, with chronic illness for years, and it's like, wow, people with chronic illness, it's like they bring tons and tons of labs to me, and they're all relatively normal, and it's because the right thing hasn't been looked at yet.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. Branson here, is hormone therapy over promoted compared to other options? Hormone therapy is a very interesting and I think emerging still.
So I mean, historically, I guess it depends on where you say historically, but in the last 20 years, hormone replacement therapy has been widely underutilized and misunderstood because of the Women's Health Initiative study that came out in the early 2000s saying that there was this increased cancer risk and cardiovascular risk from hormone replacement therapy. I don't want to try to go into all the details of those studies, and there's many people that could talk about that better than me, but what I can say is there's a bit of a renaissance with hormone replacement therapy because what we're seeing from the research is that it is highly protective for women. Like there's this thing called the timing hypothesis. So it's really about the timing of when it's used. And so you can use it during perimenopause, but especially, menopause within the first 5 years, it appears like there's a lot of protective benefits to the brain and probably the cardiovascular system, and the bones and bone loss and stuff. So I will say that it's actually been under promoted. And the other side of that is that it's not like a cure-all. It's not like a woman, for most women, it's not like they're going to take hormone replacement therapy and now every symptom's better and like everything's all good. Like some women will say like, oh my God, it changed my life. Hormone replacement therapy was the thing. And that's because you were impacted in your individual way. You were impacted by the change in the hormones more than anything else. But when women take hormone replacement therapy, which many do, and they're like, yeah, it helped my hot flashes some, but I still have a ton of brain fog. My sleep is still messed up. I still have nights, saying all things is like, yeah, so there's a lot going on besides hormones, right? Because if it was only about hormones, you could take hormone replacement therapy and we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
What does that look like? What is happening when a woman takes hormone replacement therapy? Obviously they're getting hormones, but is there a series? Is it always the same thing? What does that look like?
Oh gosh. Well, this is not my forte. This is not my forte because I practice, natural approaches to support the body system. But in general, there's different forms. There's oral, there's transdermal patches and gels and things. But just different ways to get the hormones into your body. And
in certain places as well, right?
Well, I'm talking about systemic. So
you said the gels. I know about that.
Yeah. So what are some of the absorbed through the skin? So systemically, the whole idea is, I guess I think of it as sort of like help the hormone withdrawal. It's kind of like hormone withdrawal, and there can be a lot of symptoms. And so let's replace it, but let's replace it at like the lowest effective dose we need to help take the edge off of this and help your quality of life and help kind of this transition. Let's help your hormones be a little more stable through the transition, but it's not going to stop menopause, right? Of course that's going to happen. So it's just a tool to help. And it does have protective benefits to decrease long-term risk. So I work with women, for me, it's like if a woman is or isn't using hormone replacement therapy, I have a lot of options to help,
That's where I wanted to go in with this. So how does that look from your standpoint? The approach, the cause is the same. The approach is holistic more than, we need medicine, but we also need to really investigate these other paths because one, they're enabling our body to do what's the best thing. The body is the best healer of the body there is. There's a whole lot of stuff going back and forth with big pharma and big ag. I've got a whole irritation there. I look at us going around they pass us back and forth. Big ag sends us to big pharma to fix what big ag did. And, you know what I mean by that. But anyway, you can't get rid of traditional, nor should you get rid of traditional medicine. But you need a holistic approach, which includes traditional medicine where needed. There's a point in time you're probably going to need a surgery. Maybe, I broke every bone in this half of my body about 3 years ago. So, I probably needed some surgery there. But anyway, what does it look like? Here's the ball. I'm volleying it back to you. What does it look like from you?
Yeah, well, I think one easy way to think about it is, and this is a very kind of functional medicine kind of perspective, is body systems. What do I need to support here? What's going on typically in this scenario and during this transition, and how do I support that? So the hormonal system is one system. And so from a natural perspective, I really like to use phytoestrogens. These are, phyto means plant. So they're estrogen, they're molecules in plants that are close enough to estrogen that they will bind to the receptors, the same receptors on cells that normal estrogen binds to, but it's not regular estrogen. It doesn't look exactly the same, so it's not near as potent. They're weak stimulators, but they can help to fill some space. So it's kind of it's a little bit of like a hormone replacement therapy from the plant world. I'll use those. And along with that, I'll use adaptogens. So adaptogens are, these are like the first foundational thing that I would be like, yeah, this makes sense for like everybody going through menopause to bring these things on board, unless for some reason there was an unforeseen contraindication to not do it. But in general, these are very safe. So
are these supplements? Are these supplements?
Yeah. Well,
how do you? receive.
Okay, let me touch on the phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogens they're in a lot of different herbs, but they're also in foods. So soy is the most commonly known phytoestrogen food, but also other legumes. So beans and lentils and things. But soy has a lot. And so absolutely increasing phytoestrogens in the diet is huge. I'm going into the supplement side of it. I can come back and talk about dietary recommendations.
It's interesting to have the different effects of. I mean, this is holistic. You're right now. You're looking at the kitchen. The kitchen is an important aspect of this stage in a woman's life, aside from other situations. But right, I mean, we're in the kitchen right now.
Yeah. Well, let me just back up to say my approach is to focus on diet recommendations, movement recommendations, in particular, resistance training.
Body movement? Okay.
Yeah. And starting to build muscle, resistance training over cardio all day. Start to build muscle. Focusing on
muscle over cardio.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
muscle's huge. Muscle's like,
why?
There's not many things that you can say like, if you do this one thing, it will help with everything. And that's probably the one thing I could say is if you can start to build muscle, that will probably help with everything because it helps it lowers inflammation. It helps blood sugar regulation. It increases your metabolism, your basal metabolic rate. It'll help brain fog and fatigue and everything. So that's really big. And
you know
then,
what else it does? You know what else it does?
Huh.
I've discovered this now that I'm getting to be an old fart. We do a lot. We do a few fitness shows, and I was talking to this lady, Fitz, about this. And one thing I noticed, you know how when people get older, their skin gets more tissuey, and it also can wrinkle. You get that look, right? Yeah. Especially like flabby stuff, and this and that. You know what else it does? It helps the skin. It's amazing. Yeah. It literally fills back in that balloon.
That makes sense.
If you start losing, right? I mean, you fill that back, and that gives you better health. Obviously, all the things you said, but also physically. That's one thing that is, as you get older, your body changes all over. Building muscle. I've gotten way back into exercise.
That's good. That's good. I mean, obviously not just important for women. Yeah, it's important for everyone as they age. So what I'm focusing on would be like, diet, resistance training, sleep hygiene, stress management, lots we could talk about there. But then I was moving into also increasing phytoestrogens in food, but then supplementing can really help as well. So some common phytoestrogen herbs would be like Rapontic rhubarb is one. Licorice root has phytoestrogens in it. Probably the best known one, two, are like hops. The hops that's used to flavor beers, phytoestrogen, and red clover. There's many others, but those are just common ones. And clover is a great one to just make tea with. But a lot of times, taking it in like a capsule form, potentially a tincture form, is good. But then I don't want to leave out adaptogens because this is really, really important. So adaptogens are herbs and some mushrooms. And by definition, there's not one thing they do. They broadly stimulate and help balance the functions of many different parts of your biology that are required for health. So that will help balance the immune system. They will help with blood sugar regulation. They will help the stress response. One of the best things that they're known for is modulating the stress response. So related to cortisol, and making it so that through that, all the things I was talking about that the adrenal glands and cortisol regulate, you can think of all of the things that impacts as helping. So adaptogens, another way to just think about it, the name is like, it helps you adapt. And all that's really happening, I mean, you can think about so I recommend them for just as a general sense, so people know, it's like, if you're going through a lot of stress in your life, mental, emotional stress or physical stress, adaptogens are a great support because all that's happening is a stressor is happening and you have to adapt in some way. Your physiology has to adapt, your brain, your emotions, you have to adapt. That's what we're doing all the time as humans. So when you need support adapting, these herbs are wonderful. Well, that's what the menopausal transition is largely. It's a large stressor to your body and your brain. So, and if you are adapting really well, you'll have fewer symptoms than if you're not adapting well, you have more symptoms. So adaptogens are really beautiful, and they can help with a lot of symptoms, and they're wonderful to help with anxiety and mood in general. A lot of the symptoms of menopause. So those two things together are usually like foundational in terms of supplement wise.
This is and it's such an important thing that by the way, we've still got at least a half, maybe 10 questions here coming up.
Okay.
We've already been on for over an hour.
No, I didn't know that.
10 minutes. Yeah,
No, I had no idea.
It's flying by really fast. There's still just shy of 300 people on here.
Cool.
And I wanted to make sure, because I know there's going to be some questions coming in. And, if you ever seen podcasts before, somebody may come back an hour later, a minute later, a year later, and say, I wish I would have talked to the doc about this. I wish I would have been on. So I like to leave your contact information towards the bottom of the chat. I don't want to get lost in the middle or anything, but sometime in the next question or two, you see where that private chat box is probably on your right side, I think.
Yeah.
Put the contact information in there that you want people to be able to reach you at. I assume we have the ability to get some of these. So how does the process work with you? Before I get back into the questions, as you're okay, good, you got it on there. While you're answering, I'll copy and paste it over. But in working with you, so you're an author, but you're also a practitioner. So how does that work? So not me, but is somebody coming to you and then you're having those discussions? With today's technology, a lot of things can be handled. But and then are you supplying these supplements? What's the program look like, if you don't mind me asking? Give me a little plug here.
Yeah, well, I'll say that my practice has shifted because in the last few years, because my full-time position now is that I teach in a graduate program. So I still do work with people. It's virtually, but basically what it looks like is people will email and reach out and say, I have this thing going on. Do you have availability? And my first visits are like an hour and a half. I get a lot of information, so I understand what's going on. And then maybe we'll do some tests if we need to. Sometimes we don't always need to, and it's kind of clear where to start. And then it's pretty easy to recommend, give supplements. I have an online dispensary that I can just drop stuff in there and say, hey, this is the probiotic I recommended or whatever it is. So it's kind of like that. And then, but the bridge system is not my practice. The bridge system is an educational and will be a supplement company here when the supplement's ready in like another month. And that's a phytoestrogen adaptogen, largely supplement because of what I was just saying to you. So
yes,
called PhytoAdapt. So it's going to be coming out. I'm really excited about it because put
that's the bridge system
into the thought of formulating this. So
that's exciting, isn't it? They talk about it's interesting. Little side note here, interesting story. You've heard of the term centurions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they did a study a while back, whenever it was, and they because they discovered that there's in some areas there's actually little pockets of centurions. Yeah. And what started the interest of that, the curiosity began, and that's what we're built on here in this the show is curiosity. And what they started looking at is, okay, so these people are in different countries, different parts of the world, different foods, different elevations, different landscapes, all this stuff. Nothing was similar. So why are there these pockets around? There's one here actually in Kansas City, or Kansas. I don't know if it's Kansas City, but anyway, the reason they found was because these people had a mission, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a joint mission, but say pilgrims, and not pilgrims, but monks, right? There were monks in areas. They had a mission, and you're on a mission, and I only bring that story up because it really does change your life. It really is a big, awesome feeling when something that you've been, like you just said, put your career and your life into. How long away is it? By the way, that's the correct email there, right?
That's it. Yeah. And if you go to the bridgesystemmethod.com, it's the same as the email, just .com. You can get a free 88-page guide that I wrote called the Bridge System that is like step by step to. I mean, put in your email to get it, but it's like we're not going to spam you and stuff. So it's just. It's a step-by-step kind of some of the things I've talked about. And then it's really just like, here's what to do with your diet for this 3 weeks. The next 3 weeks, do this.
Oh, wow.
It gives you foods. It mentions, some of the herbal approaches and things. It just gives you a little bit of a step-by-step. So you don't have to try to create all this from here and there and whatever. So it's pretty good though. I brought together a lot of the things that address a lot of the holistic aspects of what I've been talking about, and it's not just like a hormone focused thing,
It's amazing how we're really finally coming back to this. We're actually coming back to what's always been around. I mean, it's not like all of this stuff that you're talking about. It's not like any of this is new and mumbo jumbo stuff. This has been this is throughout our existence. The body was meant to heal itself. We already talked about how fascinating it is, but anyway, let's get back onto a couple of questions, if you don't mind, before we Clayton here. What does root cause really mean in menopause care? What does root cause mean?
Yeah, so because it's not a disease, there's nothing to fix per se in that way. Like there's not a disease to cure or to heal, right? So we're not thinking about it necessarily in that way about what's the cause, but we're thinking about what's the cause of the experience that the person's going through, the symptoms that they're telling me they're having. If they're telling me that so one question that I often ask probably every patient actually that I work with is, they're telling me about all these symptoms and different things they're going on, their experience. And then I say okay, what's the worst thing about it? So what's impacting you the most? What is affecting your life and the way that you want to live your life the most? And so then you'll just have a couple of things. So the question about cause is what's causing this fatigue or brain fog, as an example. And so it could very well be that a woman tells me my brain fog and my anxiety are the worst things. And then I do some more digging and I find out her gut sounds like it's really messed up. And she's also had this history of repeated antibiotics for UTIs and, different things like that. And so that's maybe this actually, sure, there's a hormone component, but actually if we help the leaky gut aspect in the microbiome, we might just see that the symptoms get a lot better, right? So that was more of a root cause than the hormones were. That's kind of the way that I would say you're thinking about it, is just what's really underneath the symptoms and the experience,
Interesting. Hey, let me ask you this, just to shift a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What should partners know that they miss? David here, what should partners understand but often miss? Because that's got to be a big deal, because now that's another layer of potential stress, right? If we've been together, and obviously it also depends on how the relationship already is, but what should partners understand that they miss?
Yeah, well, there is that piece that can't be overlooked of what's the health of the relationship, and what's that like? Because if I will say that just as though the woman is experiencing stress, right? A stressor to her body, like I was saying, but that also means the relationship is going to be undergoing some stress, most likely. So
of course,
what's the bank account for that relationship, for one? Is it already right on the edge and you haven't been doing that well? Because it could just push it over, right, to where things get really rough. So just to say that that all that context matters. But in general, as a loving partner, I would say to hopefully hear some of what I'm saying today, and that it's very possible that some of these things that I'm talking about that happen emotion-wise, mood-wise, or like if, you can imagine if you're in pain also, like how nice are you if you're in pain? And some women have a lot of joint pain and muscle pain. So lots of things.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, if you're in close proximity and in a love relationship, oftentimes that is the safest place to actually let out what's going on, right? And so holding space as much as you can to say like, okay, and not making it personal. It's again, context. Maybe it is personal given the situation, but sometimes, really it's just like, oh, she is like really not happy with me right now. And she's, can't stand the way I smell and stuff. If you've gone through that, what I'm talking about. Then it's like, okay, like, I guess, hold space is like, and have empathy and compassion as much as you can, I would say is like the best thing that you can do in that situation. And couples counseling really cannot be overstated. Like it is really helpful.
Professional work.
Really helpful to work with somebody to help with the communication, because if you have healthy communication during this time, then you have a lot better chance of getting through it in a healthy way, right? When the communication breaks down in any relationship, that's when it's really, that relationship's at risk, and like individual mental health is at risk and things. So I hope that helps. That's, and also doing your own work, taking care of yourself. Men, take care of yourself, because there might be some relationship stress. Do things that are good for yourself. Start, whatever that is. If you like
exercising.
What you need to
build muscle.
I've been starting to meditate because I'm like, I really know that meditation is good for me. And so I need to just stop putting it off and just make myself do it. It's non-negotiable. So
Speaking of that, and flipping the back to menopause here, how long? What's the long-term risk of ignoring, some of the problems? We touched on this kind of a third of the way in. Remember, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but just to kind of add a little bit of color for Dennis here.
Yep.
How do you address his comment?
Thanks for the question, Dennis. It's really important. So
It
some big factors to consider are that would be bone loss, so osteoporosis, sarcopenia, which is a loss of muscle, like kind of a serious loss of muscle, and that's so serious because that's how ultimately, women can get to like frailty, fall risk, those sorts of things. So that's a really big one.
Broken hips. Yeah.
So also think about type 2 diabetes development because of the blood sugar regulation can start to become more difficult. And women also have a shift when they go through menopause where they start to accumulate more visceral fat. And visceral fat can be more inflammatory and lead to more metabolic disease risk. And
What's in visceral?
It's your viscera are your organs in your abdomen, in your abdomen. So visceral fat is, not all fat is created equal, basically. So if you get fat kind of like in your abdomen and it's like more like around organs and things like that, it starts to contribute to blood sugar dysregulation and inflammation and metabolic disease, which connects to cardiovascular disease risk, which I could not leave that one out as, potential risk if things aren't, paid attention to during menopause, is that the cardiovascular disease risk can go up because of lipids and inflammation. And so those are the main ones off the top of my head. And women are at a greater risk for dementia risk. Again, that's
Hey, whoa. Women are at a greater risk for dementia, or
a greater risk for dementia when they go through after they go through menopause. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Oh, a greater risk than themselves, but men are, I think, at a greater. Don't men have a greater risk of menopause in general, or
dementia?
Have dementia in general, right? Don't they? No,
I would not say that.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. Cool.
I don't remember the numbers.
Good.
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but yeah, also the risk of all these things after postmenopause, it's
all
like
increase.
It's all of a sudden, boom, all the things I said, it's like, whoa, the risk was there and it was about equal to men, and now it jumps, is kind of the general trend.
Let's switch this to something that's at this stage still important to men and women. How can employers better support women in midlife? Now, that's a kind of a interesting question. I'm assuming this is an employer, but it's interesting in that you gotta, again, back to relationship, but in the workforce, but this is also a personal thing. How is there a way? I mean, is this an active or a receiving thing when you're employer? I assume receiving.
Well, yeah, it's not. That is a really great one, and not one I've given near as much thought as other things. But I think that understanding, it depends on how big of an employer you are, obviously. But really understanding your employees and understanding what their experiences and what their needs are, and that may be through one-to-one conversation feedback, depending on your type of business, or it may be a survey of sorts. But understanding like what are their actual needs, and it might be this is a different women's health perspective, but like you could easily be asking like, what do you need to do to support women around their period? Because that can be a significant time when a lot of women have really painful periods and like they're unable to show up at work as their fullness or even at all because they need to be in bed or something. So you could ask that question, how do you support women in that? And similarly, how do you support them as they're going through the changes I'm talking about? And I think that flexible time off policies are great if you can do that. Understanding in terms of benefits, what kind of support you can give them. And is there any additional, besides like providing health insurance, is there like an additional mental health benefit you can provide? Like the university I work at for students has this thing called Timely Care, and it's a free mental health. You can get free counseling through the app with people. And so that is an example, that's students, but like just little things like that. And I think like anything you can do to support the health of people that you can be creative with will be supportive.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, there's a lot of guys on here today. I
was noticing that.
Know.
I was like,
I know. I was a little surprised, especially here at the end. A lot more men. That's interesting to me. It's great. Now we do tilt more. The show audience is usually, I think it's like 65, 35, something like that, men and women. But anyway, so Jason's asking, what's the first step should women take when symptoms start? So that's a hard question. Obviously, it's men asking these questions because I already know that's a kind of a tough question because, like you said, there's variations in that. So somewhere around 51, you're let's just say it that way. Somewhere around 51, where those symptoms are where you said
that's the average age of menopause. But remember, the symptoms of perimenopause start many years earlier.
3, 4, 5, 6. You said.
I'm going to just flip that a little bit and say,
okay.
Well, because remember I said like women probably don't realize at first that that's what's going on, that they're entering perimenopause, which is a process in itself. So I'm going to just flip it and say, I've been asked the question before, what should women do to prepare for perimenopause? And that's when I say, that's kind of how I would answer this question. I would say women should do everything that they can to take their health seriously now. So what I mean by that is if you know that your diet could be improved, it's like choose that and start focusing on improving your diet. Start resistance training, start lifting weights. I'm telling you, so make your health for each woman, make your health a priority and know and trust that the healthier that you make yourself now, the stronger your body is going to be in every aspect to be able to adapt and handle this transition better. If you have a health condition, make sure the health condition is managed appropriately. Don't if you've got an autoimmune condition, let's say, and it's not managed very well, say there's a lot going on biologically, do something to get that under control because it's going to get probably rough during that time, so that's what I would say is just take your health seriously, women. I'm saying women,
they should do
guys asking me a question.
They should do that their entire life. Obviously, we all should, right?
We all should.
But to your point there, so probably starting around 42, 43, 44, 45, you should really start now taking that attention to the next level to prepare for perimenopause. Is that kind of what that was about?
Well, with the caveat of what you said is like, it would be ideal if any of us, regardless of, any of us would take our health seriously throughout our lives. So the earlier the better.
100%.
But honestly, 35 would be
35. Okay.
Because this is something that's like, men have the ability to say like, I'm just going to sort of I'm just going to sort of experience this gentle decline in testosterone and, this male experience. Women, perimenopause is coming and menopause is coming. So knowing that it's coming at 35 probably makes better sense to kind of say, okay, in 10 years, let's say, when that transition starts happening, I want to have the habits in place that mean, I'm not trying to do an uphill battle of behavioral change. And we all know how hard that is anyway, to like start eating differently and moving and all this if you haven't been doing it. So, I think that the sooner the better, and probably in the 30s would be.
Because exactly like what you just said, it's a different transition happening right around the corner here, and it's coming. This is something that's actually coming, and all of this it goes back to education. It goes back to this conversation isn't being had, or has not traditionally, at least up till now, has not had enough attention. It hasn't been talked about enough because it is so important for the things that you talked about. As far as women's roles, the most important one coming up, but they're a caterpillar, got to get to a butterfly before they can do that, and it's critical in that. But we don't know enough. We think the opposite about it, and that's damaging society as a whole. It's a piece of not being able to improve our society as a whole. Now this is an interesting one. Again, another guy. You're nailing the guys today. I don't know what's
well, I'm
happening.
hearing a lot of for support, right? Like I'm hearing
it's a lot of
support employees and family.
Exactly, and partners. Like here, how can families support without minimizing? And that's the important thing. And I know why a guy's asking that question, because we're not all that bright, right? Without minimizing the experience.
I think, the first thing you can do to not minimize is to normalize and validate.
Ooh.
And witness them and just like acknowledge, and that can't happen once. Like it's continual, like validation, normalization. Even that you heard this podcast, like I listened to this podcast and I heard this, doctor explaining perimenopause and menopause. And I want you to know that like, wow, I learned a lot. And I think that, I understand what you're going through a lot better. So I just want you to know that, that's huge, because to feel seen is, it goes a long way. And I think that family-wise, structure-wise, or thinking about the structure of the family and how you've done things, and how don't be afraid to be imaginative about reinventing. Like, okay, we've raised our kids, and had our family structure like in this way, and this has been the routine of when I go to work and you go to work, and however you've been doing it, right? And you get the kids from school, and don't be afraid to reimagine. Like, okay, you've had a lot of fatigue lately, and it's really bad in the afternoon. Like, I see that some days you just need naps. Like, maybe we could work it out so that I could go get the kids from school so that you don't have to like drive there because you're so fatigued. Like just anything like that is like so supportive. And it also helps someone to feel seen, right? When so.
And the key to that is seeing that, taking a part of your own life taking part in your own life, and guys, I can say guys partners, for sure that this is one of those things where you have to see it before somebody says it to you. That's a much better thing, because now you're seeing. Now, after if you're too late to have her bring it up first, but it's better if you notice something, huh?
Well, hear what's being said, but also be. Be observational to the person that you know pretty well, probably, if you've been in a relationship for a long time.
I would hope so.
Take a moment to like not center yourself and center her and say like, wow, what's going on with her? What does she need? So hopefully between those two things, you'll be able to just show up in the way that you want, the best way possible that you can.
Well, this has been fascinating, my friend. Right now it just hit exactly an hour and 30 minutes.
Cool.
And those same 300 people, they haven't moved an inch. They haven't.
Right on.
Sometimes, you get people drifting in and out or whatever. But yeah. So what do you want to leave everybody with before I throw you in the green room? And keep those peanuts. Leave them alone.
Leave everybody with. Well. I mean, I would encourage you, if you're a woman on here, I would encourage you to get the guide at thebridgesystemmethod.com. And it's the same as the Gmail. It's just the .com instead of Gmail. Yeah, I would encourage you to get that. But also, men, get that and share it. Share it with a woman who matters to you. To just help give another tool. I think that's really great. And yeah, just also. Keep your, for any women going through this time, and if you're having a hard time with this and you're feeling lost in it, know that there is another side to it. The transit, that's the reason that it's called the bridge system. That why I called it that, because it's like you're bridging a space from kind of the pre to the post menopause. Yeah. And it doesn't mean like, okay, here you're at menopause today and everything's all better, but it does reach a point for most women where it's just it starts to ease, and there is another side to it. So I just want to give you that sense of optimism that it's like, get the support you need now, but don't lose hope that that you're never going to be the same, or the old you is gone forever and all that stuff, because it doesn't have to be true.
Beautiful, man. Give everybody a big wave. Everybody is just locked in. This is such an important conversation, and I'll meet you in the green room in a little bit. Let me lock this puppy down for the day.
Good.
Say bye to everyone.
All right, bye everybody. Thanks.
All right. That was awesome, guys. I've really been interested in this show, in this episode, as I knew it was coming down the calendar here. But I never realized how little and I know I'm not, unless I'm more involved in a field. You only know what you know, and this is one of those conversations that I hope people really sit with. Not just listen to it, because what we talked about today isn't really just about menopause. It's not. It's about being believed, about having language for what's happening in your body and in your life, and about understanding that feeling off isn't failure. It's often just information. Dr. Myers, thank you for bringing clarity without fear, and insight without ego. Conversations, like I was just saying, like this, help people feel less alone and more equipped to ask better questions. Now, for those of you watching or listening right now, if this conversation resonated, the single most helpful thing you can do is stay connected. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Insights and Straight Talk with Rodd Duff and producer Barbie, and subscribe to our Substack. We publish 3 times a week with deeper reflections, episode extensions, and written pieces that don't fit into video formats necessarily. We also appreciate your support by following us on X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Every share helps these conversations reach people who need them. I also want to mention that I write a weekly column in the Mangum Star News, where many of these same themes, health, education, community, and the lived experience of the great middle class, well, they continue there in written form. If you're a reader there, thank you very much. If you're new, I hope you'll check it out. And as always, this show exists because of community. Guests who are willing to speak honestly, partners who believe in dialogue, and the audience, you guys, that shows up curious, thoughtful, and engaged. Dr. Myers, thank you again for being here. And to everyone watching, stay until after the outro video, where you'll see producer Barbie again, and a little surprise for me after that. So as always, stay curious, stay connected, and we'll see you next time on Insights and Straight Talk. I'm Rodd Duff. I am.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.